From 2Keto LLC, it's Keto Woman Podcast with Daisy Brackenhall.
Hello, Keto Lovelies. I'm Daisy Brackenhall, and I've spent most of my life struggling with my weight and confidence, and I've always had a difficult relationship with food. Even when I finally got to my target weight after weight loss surgery and eating low carb, I couldn't maintain it and I was miserable. Keto has given me the freedom to fall in love with food again without the constant gain, loss, guilt, virtue cycle of before. Health and happiness is where it's at now, running on fat. Welcome to the Keto Woman Podcast. Each week I'll be chatting to inspirational women, maybe the odd man, to discover the secrets to their success. I'm not a doctor and most of my guests won't be either, so we can't offer you medical advice. It's always best to work with your own doctor because they know you and have access to the bigger picture. This week's extraordinary woman is Joie Vawter. Joie is a native of Michigan. She loves life, her husband, 2 kids and 2 puppies. Joie is an innately curious person and she has honed many skills over the years that interest her. She's a lifetime learner and this is her main hobby. For her sanity, Joie teaches dance to kids, has a ministry for prayer and officiates weddings. She recently added nutrition coach to her list as well. Joie lets off steam lifting weights and dancing ballroom and Latin socially. Welcome, Joie, to the Keto Woman Podcast. It's lovely to have you here today.
Thank you, Daisy. I'm thrilled to be on your podcast.
So why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Joie Vawter, as Daisy said. I love my life. I have a pretty good life that I've been blessed with. I have a wonderful husband of 19 years. I have 2 children, a son who is 15 and a daughter who's 13 and a half. And this past year, we have rescued and adopted 2 puppies, so they fill my life up as well. I'm an innately curious person. I always have been. So I've honed many skills over the years that have interested me. And I consider myself a lifetime learner because of that. And I consider learning to be my main hobby. First and foremost, though, I do manage my home and take care of my children and my husband and my puppies. But for my sanity, I do get out there and I teach dance classes to kids. I have a ministry for prayer. I do prayer visitations and pray with people. And the other really fun thing I get to do, because I'm a minister, is I get to officiate weddings. And recently, because of keto, and learning this way of eating and loving it and seeing what it's done for me, I've become a nutrition coach and put that on my list as well. And in addition to letting off steam for myself, I lift weights 3 times a week and I go dancing in the ballroom and Latin world, and I do that socially.
Fabulous. I absolutely love Strictly Come Dancing on UK TV. I think it's called Dancing with the Stars over there. It's one of my favourite programmes. I love it. I'd love to be able to dance like that.
You should give it a try. Oh. You could do it. If you can walk, you can do it. That's what I tell everybody.
Okay.
I promise.
I'm not sure I have all the moves, but and do you do all the dances? Are there favourites you have?
I do all of them except for one. And my favorite is Ballroom Hustle. That's my absolute favorite. And my favorite smooth dance is Foxtrot. But I do love any type of good Latin dancing.
Yeah, Latin's my favorite. Ballroom Hustle, though, that sounds interesting. What's Ballroom Hustle?
It can be done to all your popular top 40 music, pretty much. It's 1, 2, and 3 is the count. So it's basically 4 steps. And it's just rocking back and forth, and you do a lot of turns. You can do a lot of partner sequencing. So basically, when you look on Ballroom, Strictly Come Dancing or Dancing with the Stars here in America, anytime pretty much that the partners separate and do synchronized dancing, they're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, and 3. that is all in the Ballroom Hustle base.
Right. I see. Yeah.
But you can link it up as partners, and it's a lot of turning. But all your dances are almost interchangeable. It's just a matter of where the accent beats are and basically, or how you move your body.
I was going to say the hips. They're always going on about the hips in Latin.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I tell you, my absolute favorite that I'd love to watch and I would love to be able to do is the Argentine Tango.
Yeah, that is a phenomenal dance.
So sexy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I dance that only with my husband.
Right. But you do dance it. You're going to have to video that one day. I need to see that.
Yeah, I don't think I'm as good as video worthy for that one because I dance it with my husband, but that's who I dance that one with.
Fabulous. Well, to be honest, when you see it, it looks so intimate. It's that kind of dance, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. You really have to give your all and you really have to trust.
Yeah.
For that one.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. Well, I could talk about Strictly all night, but we're here about keto, really. Yes. Everyone's keto is different. So what does it mean to you, and what does your keto look like on a day-to-day basis?
Yep. So for me, I'm basically a daily intermittent fast person. It fits into my life really well. And I started that pretty early on in my keto journey. As soon as I felt quite or close to being fat adapted, I jumped into seeing how long I could go without eating. Of course, the bulk of it was while I was sleeping at night. And then in the morning, I would just kind of see how long I could go without eating. And so the first time I did it, I made it 14 hours and I was super thrilled and proud of myself, as I should be, and I think anybody should.
Yeah.
And then it took me like a month to work up to 16 hours from that point. And I have no shame in that, and I don't think anybody else should either. And now I usually do a 16-hour fast, and then I give myself an 8-hour window to eat, and I usually break that up into 2 meals a day. However, sometimes I'm a little bit hungrier than usual, so I will break it up into more like a 3-meal day on those days, but it's still within the 8 hours. There are times as I'm getting along further into keto and wanting to make sure it stays as a way of life for me that I'm working on allowing myself some days when I'm hungrier than usual to go ahead and start eating earlier if I want, and not necessarily sticking strictly to my 16-8 intermittent fast. And that will happen on Saturdays, usually when my husband makes a really good breakfast and I'm hungry, and so smelling the food, I think, yep, I'm going to go ahead and go up and eat this.
Yeah.
So my eating window becomes a little bit longer on Saturdays, usually just by an hour to an hour and a half.
Can resist the smell of bacon, right? You
Exactly.
Can't do it, can you?
No, bacon and eggs. Oh, I love bacon and eggs. So, and I love that I can eat all of that guilt-free.
Absolutely.
Without a worry.
Yep.
And so also, as I've gotten further on with keto, it has become a very liberating and satisfying thing for me to be able to eat this way, because I've also learned that calories in, calories out does not rule this way of eating. It is a guideline, but it does not rule it. What rules it is our hormones, insulin and glucagon. So that has become very liberating and satisfying to me because it's so hard to figure out how many calories do I eat? What am I going to expend? I just feel like we're set up for failure with that thinking.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. And so the other benefit of my daily keto and making this a way of life is, I'm no longer hangry. I'm not walking around starving all the time. And I've checked with my family to make sure, a nicer person over this past 18 months. And I brought up that I'm no longer hangry or walking around starving all the time because I did not have diabetic issues or pre-diabetic. I had quite the opposite. I had low blood sugar. My sugar, when I would test it with my grandma, who was type 2 diabetic, my sugar would be like 55 anytime I tested it, except for if I just ate. And then it would hop up to like 70, 75. But then it would drop right back down, and I mean quickly, right back down to that 55. So I would get nauseated and get the shakes. I would faint because I would go too long without eating because, you're trying to keep your weight down. So don't stuff your face. But I learned that I actually had to eat every couple hours. I had to pack anywhere I went snacks to make sure that I didn't risk fainting while out and about. So coming back to learning about keto, and now that I eat this way, I do not have those issues anymore. That's part of why it's so liberating for me. I don't have to pack snacks. I can go a long time without eating because keto has allowed me to keep my blood sugar stable. Whether it sits at 55 or 60, I don't have any issues anymore since being keto.
Right. Yes, I hear quite a lot in what you're saying about perhaps not so much now, but previously it sounds like you had a real need to control what you were eating and when you were eating. And you've mentioned to me before that you used to model. So was the fact that your appearance was very important and tied into what you did for a living? Did that influence how and when and what you ate?
Oh, yes, very much. I grew up in the dance world. So, you never wanted to get too heavy to be in your leotard and tights in front of everybody in class.
Right.
I never had pressure to be super thin or super low weight in class. I don't want to give that misconception. It's just something that I think you put on yourself, that you don't want to look bigger than anybody else, or too big. The costumes, they're not made for really heavy people. So you want to be conscientious about how your body looks and what your weight is. And then I moved right from the dance world into teaching dance and then also into the modeling world. I became a spokesmodel for XM Satellite Radio, and I also was a product specialist on the National Auto Show circuit here in the United States for a car company. And it's not that they would tell you you're too heavy or anything like that, but they bought your uniforms for you, your really nice, expensive suits. Yeah. You'd get measured and they would be tailored to you. And so if you put on the pounds or anything like that, and they had to get your clothing adjusted, they're not going to be really happy about it. And of course, you feel awful. So I'm not going to say they were loud about keeping your weight down or things like that, but it certainly was definitely an indirect message about you better stay the size that we hired you at.
Yeah, I can certainly hear that undertone just in, a combination really of thoughts that you're putting on yourself, but also just those unwritten rules that sound like they're running through the job description. Even if they're not overt, they're certainly there.
Correct. And, I didn't like to stay as product specialist or spokesperson with these companies. I did not have to re-audition every season, but my size could not change in between seasons. So, you had to keep everything relatively consistent, because what they would do is they would just put your size in and order you your uniform for that year. And once again, you better fit into it. And if you don't, you better figure out a way really quick to do so.
Right. And so maintaining that size, that was dictated really for you, although you know, to a certain extent, you came in at whatever size, but you really had to be strict about maintaining that. How did you do that? Was that easy? How did you do that nutrition wise?
Yeah, at first it was easy because when I joined the modeling world, I was just a fresh 19-year-old. So I had a pretty darn good metabolism. I had just come off of, you know, dancing a lot in the dance world. I'm still teaching dance classes, so still being very active with my body. So burning a lot of calories. So of course this is when you think calories in, calories out, because I am exerting tons of energy through activity all the time. So eat whatever you want when you're hungry, whatever satisfies you and gets you through. So yes, I was kind of lucky that way, but I also look now that not so much, because it primed me for being a really, really good overachiever of the standard American diet, because I always had an awareness of food guidelines and nutrition. And so those were my food guidelines. That was my nutrition information for many years. And I can tell you, with my low blood sugar and having to eat every 2 hours and making sure I'd stayed a certain way, I was an overachiever. So meaning I would eat whatever I wanted, basically, until after I had kids. And then things changed. But I was a real sugar hound, because that was the quick way to fix the low blood sugar, and I didn't understand what I was doing to myself. So that's why I say it wasn't the best priming, because as you get older, I was abusing my metabolism, and I didn't know it, because everybody in the nutrition world is telling me I'm doing right. So now I know that I was horribly abusing my metabolism.
Yes, it's crazy, isn't it? They talk about getting your blood sugar back to where it needs to be when it's low by having some sugar. But then what they don't say is what that does, it spikes it really high. And then what follows that is a crash which takes it lower. And then how do you fix that? You have more sugar. And so it goes on and on and on. So all you're doing actually is exacerbating the problem, knocking your metabolism by doing it for years and years and years, which presumably is one of the reasons why things change for you. I should imagine that big hormonal shift with pregnancy was potentially another reason, because that's often, isn't it, when women notice a change in how easy or difficult it is to regulate their weight.
Yes. With my first pregnancy, it was easy. Even though I gained I want to say about 70 pounds. It came off very fast. I breastfed my son on demand. And so I just ate whatever, whenever, and it was falling off of me regardless. I was back to my pre-pregnancy weight within 9 months, only to turn around and find out I was pregnant again.
Start all over again.
And so this time, I think I only put 40 pounds on with my daughter, because of the joys of still breastfeeding that whole pregnancy with my son.
Right.
And then I had her. The weight came back off. And what became tricky for me actually was when I weaned them from breastfeeding, and my appetite did not go down as well. And then I saw weight gain all of a sudden.
Oh, so that was the shift. So you don't have that counterweight of the breastfeeding to take the weight off. Right. That makes sense.
Right. Yeah. So I dove back into all my activities as soon as I felt that my kids could go a few hours without me. And I saw a little bit of a result, but nothing like before whatsoever.
That must have been a bit of a knock to your confidence, having always been able to maintain your weight or get it back to where you wanted it to be with relative ease. Now all of a sudden, not so easy. What's going on? And of course, usually the natural reaction to that is, what have I done? What am I doing wrong?
Yes. Total 1000% blame game on myself.
Mm-hmm.
And as if I didn't already have the mean talk to myself before when things were going good, just to ensure that I stayed doing well with my body and things like that, and try to remain competitive and relevant in the world that I was in, that only increased. And I would say probably by like 100-fold, because I had all kinds of new ways to be mean to myself.
Yeah.
In my head. So yeah, that was, not only am I having a physical struggle that's new to me, because I'm not seeing the weight come off easily, I'm adding to this internal struggle that I've always had in my life. And it's only getting worse as I'm failing on the physical part. So yeah. So that's difficult. That's something that I'm working on to fix in my life.
Yes, that sounds like it could easily be something that derails you and has lasting effects unless you work quite hard to counteract it and get things back on track. It's all very well other people saying to you, yeah, hold on, you're actually doing fantastically. You've just produced, well, not just obviously, but at that point, you're a new mum. You've produced 2 human beings. You're amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, that voice isn't the one that's ringing in your head.
Right. Yeah. And it was getting out of control back then, and that was like 2008, 2009, that it was really getting bad. And so by then I was desperate because I'm doing all this working out. I'm doing everything I can.
Counting calories, I bet, as well.
Counting the calories.
Yeah.
Eating celery, with nothing else.
Yeah. So with all of that, you're hungry, you're hangry.
Yes. Yes. And I'm becoming not a very nice person. It was not good, and I was shaky all the time and on edge all the time. And then I had a car accident in 2011, a head-on car accident. And
a head-on, wow.
Yeah, head-on. And
that's something, yeah.
That was a really tough time and a big turning point in my life. I spent 8 months in bed recovering. So all my activity, all my outside sources were taken away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And
you were used to being a very sociable person, and I know you really feed off other people. Dancing,
dancing, talking with people, whatever, I'm an extrovert. So that's how I charge up my life. And I found myself in bed. I couldn't do much. My injuries were so that I could not sustain my skeletal system, my spine, for any length of time. Thank goodness I have a small house. So it was from bed, about 10 steps to the bathroom, do what I needed to do, 10 steps back to bed. It was a lonely 8 months. And very depressing because I had no activity. I was hardly eating because I had no activity. And I was gaining weight.
Wow.
And I thought, how can this even be? I'm like not eating anything, hardly anything, and I'm still gaining weight. So, after I got healed up a bit and after the 8 months, could do a little bit more activity. I did some Pilates and worked myself into stretching, worked myself into being able to dance a little bit. I saw a little bit of weight loss, but nothing like before. So I was trying to learn how to live with myself for all those years and still heal because I was in a lot of pain and I was still very limited. As a matter of fact, only in the past 2 years have I felt semi-normal. So I went online because I said, I got to do something. I got to research and figure out what's going on because obviously this way of eating is not working. Activity, I can't keep up that kind of a pace. My body cannot do it anymore. So what am I going to do? So in early 2016, I was online and I found a trainer who was willing to take my information, analyze it for me, and tell me what he thought. And he was promoting the low carb, high fat way of eating. And that was new to me. So I sent him all my information and he wrote back to me and he told me that my calorie intake was extremely low and my activity level was extremely high. So I was very malnourished and basically starving my body because I was not fueling it properly. And so my body was storing things where it shouldn't be because it had a overload of glucose and excess. And even though my blood sugar was still low when I tested it, my body wasn't doing what it was supposed to do.
So your body was basically adapting your metabolism to fit what you were giving it and survive.
Right. Your body will slow down everything to match the calories that you're putting in. So even though I'm doing 800 to 1,000 calories a day, my body is only allowing my body to burn 800 to 1,000 calories a day, if that, because it needs so much more to just function. But I did not know that. I did not know that's how the body worked. So he taught me about that stuff and he convinced me really I needed 2,000 calories a day. He showed me just to function without activity. But I was so afraid that it was a fight to get me to 1,200 calories. And then he eventually got me to 1,400 calories a day. And then I thought, I can't eat any more than that because there's no way my body is going to shed any weight. So
you're still really fighting that old belief system. Yeah,
I was glued to it. It worked for me for so long. So how could I have not been glued to it? And then, of course, betrayed by it, I'm looking for new answers. So I did his low carb, high fat. I reduced my carbohydrates down to, I think it was like 150 a day of carbs. And then I upped the fats. And then the protein I've always left pretty moderate. And it was a slow go. I did see some weight loss, but it took me 6 months. It took me 6 months to lose 20 pounds. And I know a lot of people would say that's nothing to sneeze at, but it seemed like an eternity to me compared to what I was used to. So I continued researching more about this low carb, high fat. And I just happened to come across the Keto Diet. Actually, it was Butter Bob, actually, believe it or not.
Oh.
Butter makes your pants fall off. YouTube video link. And I thought, really? Okay, well, I'm already upping my fats and lowering my carbs, and I do feel better. And so he was talking about, how we're eating wrong and things like that. And then further down in the videos, because now I'm jumping down this rabbit hole, I saw the two keto dudes and I clicked on them, and it was a link to their website. And then it was a podcast, and then I found, of course, the Facebook group. But I started listening to the podcast, and I started with episode 1. And this would have been in the spring because, I would say around May of 2016, because Carl had just started his journey, in February. So, and he made this podcast as an accountability thing. And
that's right. Yeah.
I was thrilled because I thought, oh, I get to hear this from somebody who's just starting it out, because that would be me.
And you can play along. Yeah.
Right. And then, of course, he had the experienced friend on there that has been doing it for 2 years, and he's still alive and no heart attack. And so I said, okay, I'm going to listen to this and learn what I can. And so I did from May to the beginning of August. And during that time, I did what is called the carbohydrate step down. I just continued stepping my carbohydrates down during that time, and got confident about keto, got very interested, started talking in the groups to people and things like that. And
I think that's quite a nice approach, actually. If you're used to being quite high carb and if it seems really overwhelming and a bit daunting, is just to start knocking things out one at a time that you're used to eating. You know, whatever's easiest to get rid of first. I'm going to get rid of rice. Then I'm going to get rid of potatoes, and then I'm going to get rid of bread, and however you do it. But it is quite a nice, gentle way to ease in. Yes,
I agree. And when I talk to people, very many times they're like, well, I can't eat like that. That's impossible. And I say, I thought the same thing. But I just stepped myself down over months. I gave myself the time because I thought, if that really works, I want it to be a way of life for me. So I'm just going to take my time getting there. And then,
great approach. Yeah. This is for keeps. So I'm going to do it properly.
Right. And so, of course, I did give myself a last hurrah when I went to the Upper Peninsula, and I said, just eat whatever you want, Joey, because when we come back from this, we're going whole hog on this keto thing, and we're not going to look back as long as you start feeling better, you start seeing changes. And indeed, that is what happened the second Sunday in August of 2016. I just said, okay, I'm going to keep my carbs total at 40, net carbs around 20-25, moderate protein for me. So for me, that looks at like 65 to 90 grams of protein. I do try to stay closer to 75 grams. And then high fat is usually at least whatever I have in protein, I have in fat, or I double it, just depending on how hungry I am that day.
So you just adjust it to how you feel daily.
Yes. I had NSVs within a week. My body stopped hurting so much. I was able to stop taking the ibuprofen and the Tylenol multiple times in a day. All of a sudden it was once every 2 days, take a couple doses. What else did I see? Oh, yes, my weight, started moving, like a pound every couple weeks, which I know some people might say is slow, but for me, that was fantastic because that was movement that I hadn't seen at that pace in a very long time.
I think that's fantastic for anyone. I think, that a pound a week is great. You sustain that over a period of time. It adds up, doesn't it?
It does. And I always want to tell people, because I hear, I only lost this much weight. I only lost 9 pounds in a month. My heavens, that's awesome. Movement. And it's trending in the right direction, which is, of course, the direction you want it to be trending in, whether it's maintenance mode or you need to gain weight so it goes up, or you need to lose weight so it goes down. It's, where you want to be. But
most importantly, then, it sounds like the thing that had the biggest impact was a change in the pain that you had all the time, this chronic pain that you were dealing with. That must have felt incredible to start losing that.
It did. Like, I was waking up with much less pain. I wouldn't say I wake up pain-free, but when I am not any longer laying in bed for a half hour, convincing myself, get up, you'll feel better. And I'm just getting up and happy that I'm not in so much pain. Yeah, that was my, my moment, my aha. Like, yes, I need to continue eating this way and see where it goes.
No going back.
Right. And I haven't. I've stayed in nutritional ketosis pretty much since August 2016, as soon as I got into it. And the most I've ever left nutritional ketosis would be for like a couple hours. And then I just simply fast until I'm back in it, which is usually easy because when I notice I'm out of ketosis, it's almost time for bed. So I just go to bed and I sleep it off. So, So that's the other thing as I'm moving along in keto is ultimately I want my body to be able to switch between both fuel systems efficiently because I want this to be a way of life. So if at one point I'm at this phenomenal celebration and I know this baker is amazing and whatever they bake is going to be worth going into my body, I'm not going to deprive myself of that. I'm going to go ahead and enjoy it for that moment. And I'm not going to consider it a cheat. I'm just going to consider it enjoying life, and taking advantage that my body has two fuel systems to work off of. 80 to 90% of the time, it's fat. And then there's that 10 to 20% that will be glucose. But I'm not going to worry about it anymore because I know how my body works and how the metabolism works now through all the research that it's allowing me to be nicer to myself also in my head. And I'm not beating myself up anymore about it. Well, I do sometimes, and I catch myself, but not so much anymore.
Yeah. And again, that's how we are so different as individuals come in. You know, you don't have a history of insulin resistance. So for you, having those few bites of something that is quite loaded with carbs and is going to send your blood sugar up, you don't have to worry in the same way as somebody who's coming back from type 2 diabetes, for example, would have to worry. So that's where it's so completely individual, isn't it? And how advice really cannot be standardized. And as you've mentioned, you had all these different issues with that strict and stern voice in your head. So for you, having something like that from time to time is actually a good thing because it's dealing with those voices that you need to keep drowned out.
Yes, correct. But I will say that I'm very picky about what I'm going to indulge in that is higher in carbohydrate or sugar because of the low blood sugar. I don't want to experience that sudden drop. So I can tell you on my hand 2 times. It's coming up again this year, but at my husband's work party, there's a really good baker at this restaurant that they have the party at who makes a homemade key lime pie, like the real deal key lime pie, all from scratch. So worth having the one slice, but actually I split it with my husband, so it was half, and that was fine for me. That was enough. And then the other time was we went back to the UP, and they have hard-packed ice cream that is only in the UP. It doesn't go south of the bridge. And so I let myself have 2 ice cream cones. I ate the one in full, and then the second time I went to have it, I didn't finish it. I actually ended up giving it to my son because I said, it was great, but I don't need it anymore. So those are the 2 times that I, if anybody wanted to call it go off rails, but I call it utilizing the other fuel system, and my body seemed to have handled it well. And I noticed I've become more sensitive to signals of, okay, you've had enough. And I think that has helped me with my blood sugar as well. So it doesn't get super spiked, just moderately, and then it's not as big of a drop. And I found also, N1 for me, is if I eat some fat, some extra fat at that time, whether it be a pat of butter or some macadamia nuts, something like that, when I indulge in that, it kind of helps that sugar load as well for me at that time. So I don't think it goes as high. The other thing I do is I'll fast that day a little bit too, a little bit extra long, so that everything is on the lower end to start with. But that's my N1. Like you said, I don't know how that would work for anybody else, but that's how it works for me.
And it doesn't matter because it's what works for you
Right.
that's important. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been my journey. And
so I know one of the things that you've really enjoyed getting back to doing, because I've seen a wonderful picture of you with your little kiddies that you teach to dance, and I'll put that in the show notes because it's a fabulous picture. I love it. So that's obviously something you've got back to doing. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah. So I teach kids in the community, basically. Through a lot of homeschool co-ops, I teach their ballet dance classes, and if they have hip hop, their hip hop classes, in addition to worship and praise choreography classes. And I also will substitute in studios around when they need a substitute teacher. But yes, I love working with kids. They light up my heart. They have so little inhibition about things and how they move their body. Whatever I give them, they go all out and they just will do it. And not so much for me, just because they've been given permission. Yes, go do this, do X, Y, and Z. And of course they do feed off of my smile or my encouragement, but it's just awesome to see them say, oh, I can do that. All right, watch me. And I love that about kids. And I love the feedback I get from them. Like, well, Miss Joey, that was really cool. But do you think we can do it like this next time? Because I want them to use their imagination and their creativity and understand that it's valid. So whenever I can use their suggestion, I'm going to use it for them.
And that's nice, isn't it? Because it really feeds into their confidence as well.
Yes, and they light up. They love the class more. They're going to want to come back. And of course, I want them coming back because if I don't have them to work with, then I'm not teaching the classes. So, and that's where I get a lot of joy, is definitely in the dance world with kids. So,
yeah, and it sounds like, I know we were talking before about how that seems to have some kind of influence on the rest of their life too. The confidence and the freedom of movement they learn in your class seems to have a roll-on effect to other parts of their lives.
Oh yeah, definitely. Even for myself in my life in dance, I was incredibly shy. Even with my parents, I would whisper talk and barely whisper talk because I was afraid to talk. I just felt like nobody really wants to hear what I have to say, or it's not important. And so dance gives you a voice through movement, and then secondarily, as you start vocalizing your ideas about dance, and somebody is there to validate that, and then of course that will cross right over into other things. And people will say, my kid is so different on the stage. They're a star on the stage, but they're so quiet everywhere else. And I always have to tell parents, don't worry. I was the same thing, a star on the stage and so mild in person. But you would never guess it now if you met me or heard me talk in front of people and officiate a wedding or teach a class or pray with people. You would never guess it because it's just something that was honed over time. And my parents saw that it was something that was important to my life. They saw that it allowed me to blossom and get out of my shell little by little each season. And as the studio saw, fit to give more responsibility or ownership in dances and demonstrating in other classes and learning to assist and learning to teach. So yes. And then it, encouraged me to go take, a speech class in high school to learn how to speak in public and give a speech. And then that blossomed into me going to be the spokesperson. Actually, my first spokes job was for my parents' business and going to the vendor show and speaking on their behalf about their company. and honing my skills that way, and then eventually teaching all the dance classes, and then eventually auditioning for the auto show and for XM satellite radio. So yes, dance, it's more than just dance class, if I can tell anybody that. It is a whole package deal preparing your kid for life. So I credit a lot to dance.
Yeah, you've illustrated that really well, how slowly it just built momentum, and the repetition of it and the joy you got from it just fed into your system and built this confidence over the time that made you think, yeah, okay, so I'm going to try that. I'm going to make my first speech, and oh, now I've done that and I did really well. I'm going to try this, and I'm going to try that, and I'm going to keep going. And that also sounds like it really fed into your thirst for learning new things, new skills.
Yes, definitely. And because I'm an extrovert, even though when I was really, really shy and afraid to talk to people, even my parents, I still really needed all of that human interaction. I needed that tribe, so to speak, to pour into me so that I was energized, because even though I was so shy, and I know it doesn't make sense, I hated being alone. I did not like trying to figure out things to do on my own, because that's not how I was wired, even though I was shy. So yeah, this dance world has opened up the world for me, is the best way I can explain it. And being innately curious, yes, learning new genres, and then learning how the body works, and then of course becoming nutritionally aware, even though it was the wrong nutrition, but still learning and being interested, has fed into me researching and learning about low carb, high fat, and then ultimately keto. So yes, it was a fantastic door that I got to walk through and explore all the very many rooms, so to speak.
And the weddings, that sounds like a lot of fun too. You officiate weddings now, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I do. That is becoming my new favorite role, is wedding officiant, for sure. I've always loved weddings. I've loved my wedding. I would love to relive my wedding over and over again. There was nothing that I would have changed about it. And I've always tried to be behind the scenes somewhere in a wedding, whether it is, because I went to cosmetology school at one point. Hello, the curious lady. I did do makeup professionally for many years. And so I did makeup for brides and their wedding parties. Then it was modeling world. And so I would assist photographers who had weddings, and I would assist them by, doing setups for photo shoots and telling the bride how to stand or what angle would be better, things like that. At my church, when they would have weddings at the church, I would work behind the scenes, helping set up what they would want in the sanctuary to complement their wedding style that they're going for. So yeah, I've always been chasing working in the wedding world.
This sounds like a real passion that's been building as well, and now you get to actually marry people. You're the one who officiates that union. That must just feel incredible.
It does. That is the sweet spot, I will say. Out of all the stuff that I've done with weddings, that is definitely the sweet spot. My favorite thing to do with couples, because they get so nervous, is, make them feel like they are the only two that I see. They're the only two in the sanctuary or the hall or wherever we're at. They're the only two important people at this very moment. And that might come back to my being so shy when I was little, that I have this natural gift to kind of draw into this little area, even though we may be surrounded by 300 people. Or recently I just did one at this big mall, because that's where they wanted to get married, because that's where they first laid eyes on each other. And I actually just got a really nice review from the photographer that was there. he even mentioned in his own words that even though we were in this really busy, crowded mall and people were stopping, crowding around all the time, Joey kept that couple so calm that literally we felt like we were just in this little sphere and it was just us. And I thought, yes, that is my goal when I officiate a wedding. I want that couple to feel like for that moment in time, they're my world, they're each other's world, and that's all that matters right then and there. So I was so glad to hear somebody could see that and perceive that, what I've been trying to get across.
That's a fantastic compliment, isn't it? What a lovely thing to say. And that really validates your naturally empathetic way of dealing with people. It really validates, what a fantastic job you're doing.
Yeah, I've to get that. And he had only literally met me for 20 minutes. For him to see that in me, I was floored. Like, wow, even though I might not feel like I'm getting it across, that is exactly what I was trying. And so to know that I actually am, I was on cloud 9 for 2 days.
Yeah, it sounds like with all the new things that you decide to do, there are development of things that you've done before. There are also a development of experience you have and how you want to use your own experience to help other people, like you're doing now with your Facebook group and the nutritional coaching you're doing. Presumably that's a similar kind of development and now wanting to share and help other people with it.
Yes. Yes, my Facebook group, Let's Eat for Real with Joey. I started it because people were asking me, what I was doing, why I was so happy and had so much energy. And I thought it's going to be easier to start a group and just invite them in and explain things there instead of one by one all the time because, time it's always missing or it's hard to come by. And I just thought, I'm going to follow like the 2 keto dudes and have a group and just put it all out there. The information's out there for free, but I will bring it into the group and put it there in front of them and let them read it, watch the videos, ask them questions, let them ask me questions, whatever they want. Because I appreciated that about 2 keto dudes, that they just laid it out there for you, for free. They just, they did all the research, but they compiled it in an area for you. That's why I love the ketogenic forums. And I highly suggest that in my group as well to everybody. And so I just thought, if you can help one person like I was helped, then mission accomplished. So I do. I like to give back as much as I can where I've been helped and where I feel I can actually give back.
Yes, and I like it. I've seen how, you're very personal and personable and make nice live videos talking about different subjects and showing people different things. Like I think you were cooking some scrambled eggs the other day. I was watching along with you as you were cooking scrambled eggs. But it's nice. It deal with all sorts of different levels and just invite, like you say, inviting people into your world and just giving them a taste of what you're doing. Yeah. And hopefully, that's going to influence them in a positive way.
Yeah, I hope so. I don't know about that video. It's definitely not nearly as polished as say what the 2 keto dudes would do, but I'm trying, I'm putting it out there, and that's about the extent of my cooking skills, by the way, scrambled eggs.
Nothing wrong with scrambled eggs.
So, but yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm sure that, as I continue along, you learn, you gain experience, things will polish up, and, you learn. Every time you do something, you learn from it and you continue on, and for the next time, it's better.
Yeah.
So,
and practice makes perfect. Absolutely. Well, yes. It's been fascinating hearing about the many, many things that you've done and are still doing and carrying on learning new things and starting new interests. So what would be your top tip to give to our listeners today?
I know it's going to sound weird, my first one, but keep it simple.
Well, all the individual things, keep them simple.
Right. So for me, when I say keep it simple, when I eat a lot of the same meals because I know they work for me. I don't have to think about it. I just do it. So I'm not always looking for new recipes. That's too much for me. So I keep it simple. I don't bring a lot of things into the house. I keep it simple. I don't shop for fun. I shop for purpose. Just keep it simple. That way I don't have a lot to clean up.
That makes sense. Yeah. So it's kind of
right.
Know yourself and keep it simple
right.
for you. Yeah.
Right. And then of course, live with passion. So I will not do anything that I don't have passion for. And I encourage others to not do anything in life that you don't have passion for. And then also with compassion. So I naturally just have this big heart. I'm very empathetic. So therefore I'm quite compassionate with people. And, yeah, that's how I like to live life. Keep it simple, live life with passion and compassion. So therefore, my meals are simple with keto. We'll go back to keto. I'm very passionate about keto and the way of eating. And I'm very compassionate in the fact that I want to tell the world, or at least one person, about this way of living and how it's changed me. So, yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. And it's very apparent to me that you do live your life by all those standards, and I can hear the passion and the compassion that comes through in everything you do. So thank you so much for sharing all that with me today. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you, Joie.
Yes, thank you, Daisy. It's been an awesome time for me. I really appreciate the opportunity that you gave me today to share.
Lovely. Thank you. To get the resources and links from the show, please go to ketowomanpodcast.com. Do you want to be one of my extraordinary women? Maybe you've got an idea for a show, a topic you want to hear about. Let me know how I can tickle your earbuds by dropping me a line at daisy@ketowomanpodcast.com. If you fancy joining me on this exciting adventure and help create new shows, head on over to my Patreon page at patreon.com/ketowoman, where you can make a monthly contribution. You can also simply hit the support button on the website. It's thanks to the two keto dudes that I'm hosting this podcast, so please consider heading to their Patreon page at patreon.2keto.com and help them bring you more podcasts like this one. Attributing this week's quote has been a bit tricky, so I'm just going to link to a Quote Investigator article about it instead. I know, cop out, right? Sing like no one is listening. Love like you've never been hurt. Dance like nobody's watching. And live like it's heaven on earth. Bye-bye, Keto Lovelies.